Once in a while, yeah. Bertans is the guy I never have to remind to shoot it.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. And today's Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is also brought to you by Simon Eddy, who is today's Patreon sponsor. Head to patreon.com/redrock_bball. My name is Josh Lloyd and you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball, the same handle you can find me on Instagram and of course on Facebook at facebook.com/Red Rock Basketball. We're going to talk about all of Friday's action here. We're going to look ahead to Saturday's games as well. So,
let's get to it.
If you are watching live and you have any questions, I don't think we had any questions yesterday, but if you are watching live and have any questions you want to throw in, basketball-wise, fantasy, real life, life advice, food questions, whatever, throw them my way and we'll get to them later on in the show. It was another one of those days in the NBA on Friday that reinforces my fairly strongly held belief that you should not be playing fantasy at this point in the season. There is no reason to be playing any head-to-head leagues at this point. There is weird stuff going on, that's probably kind, weird stuff going on all over the place. Playing DFS at this point is an absolute nightmare as well, and that's why you should be ramping down your exposure on these days, especially now with what have we got left? 5 days left in the NBA season. It's going to get worse. So really be careful with what you're outlaying and save it up to go hard during the NBA playoffs, which are coming in a week's time, basically. So that's the way that I would be approaching it. That's what I've been saying for quite a while, and that's how I think that you should be looking at this this portion of the season. We had rests, we had half games, we had upset results, we had weird stuff going on all over the place. Let us start with the monstrous line of the night, and that goes to Jim Harden of the Houston Rockets. Jim with another almost triple-double, 33, 9, and 12 for Jim. He hit 7 triples. He had a block. He was 10 of 25 from the field and 6 of 7 from the line. He does maintain his number 1 ranking for the season. Unsure whether that will hold for the rest of the year. I imagine it does, even though Russell Westbrook does now average a triple-double for the year. Jim is averaging 29, 8, and 11 with over 3 triples, 1.5 steals, and going 44 and 85 from the field and from the line, with a true shooting of over 61%, which is obviously ridiculously good. He was my number 1 pick at the start of the year. He was the guy that when I had the number 1 pick, I think in one draft, he was who I took. Told everyone they should take, and it's worked out pretty well. If you took him, obviously taking Russell Westbrook at number 1 was not a bad decision either. So either of those guys were that option there, but Harden was the guy I went for. And here we are. He comes in as the number 1 ranked player. Yeah, his numbers have slipped a little bit. He's the number 2 guy post All-Star, averaging 38 and 11. Like, it's not a big deal. It's just that Westbrook has ramped his performances up during that time to overcome or to jump ahead of Harden in those rankings. But his numbers have still been quite outstanding and obviously super useful for fantasy. That's all. I don't really have too much to say about Jim Harden. The waiver wire line of the night is also the young gun of the night, and it is my man, the Blue Arrow, Jamal Murray of the Denver Nuggets. Murray dropped a 30-pointer, his first in the NBA. 4 boards, 5 assists, 2 triples, 2 steals. He was on fire, 10 of 14 from the field. He hit all 8 of his free throws. And I think a lot of you would be surprised that Jamal Murray is a top 100 player over the last month in only 24 minutes a game, averaging 13, 3, and 2, but almost 2 triples and 1.3 steals, shooting 44 and 90. So some decent numbers there, contributing in the steals category in a big way, or in a solid way, contributing in the free throw percentage category, and contributing in 3-pointers. Now, he's far from a must-own guy, but he's pushing very close to it, because Jameer Nelson had that calf problem. It kept him out. He came back for 1 game, and now he's out again. And to me, when you're an old guy with a calf issue, it's a real bastard to come back from it. I think that's what Jameer is suffering at the moment. So if we don't see Nelson for the next couple of games, I would not be surprised. Now, Murray shot the ball incredibly well here, and I wouldn't be expecting that level of shooting from him moving forward. But as I just highlighted, he is a top 100 player over the last month in 24 minutes a game. And if he's going to play 30 minutes like he has the last 4 games, 31 minutes a game, he's a top 40 player. He's a top 35 player, averaging 16, 4, and 3.5, 2 steals, 1.3 triples. That should be owned. So if you're looking for someone to go and grab, Jamal Murray is definitely one of those players who I think is going to have themselves basically a 30-minute role here for the rest of the year. It's not 100% because I don't know exactly what Nelson's doing, but if I had to guess, he is missing more time, and that is going to open things up for the Blue Arrow. He is an absolute steal for the Nuggets at pick 7, and really exciting to see him and Gaz Harris work together as the Nuggets progress throughout the next couple of seasons. I think Murray's going to be an absolute steal for them at that pick, as I touched on already. Let's go now on to the dud of the night, and it is Victor Oladipo of the Oklahoma City Thunder. It was not a good night for Vic. 7, 3, and 3 on 3 of 8 shooting. He had a 0-0, and he was a putrid 1 of 5 from the free throw line. He's been a disappointment this year, no doubt. He has fallen off in a number of areas. The big area that's really cost him, because he's playing exactly the same minutes as last year. And I thought that he would come across to Oklahoma City and he would be able to absorb a fair chunk of Kevin Durant's usage. That's actually not the case. He's taking on less usage in Oklahoma City than he was in Orlando, and that's because Russell Westbrook has been a huge part of their usage, something which the coaching staff did say at the start of the season would not be the case, but it obviously is. Now, Oladipo averages the same amount of points as last season. He's hitting more threes. He's up from 1.4 to 2 triples. His rebounding is at 4.3 as opposed to 4.8. But the big discrepancy is his assist numbers have dropped from 4 last year to 2.6. That is a huge, huge bump down. And that's a big part of his drop in value. His steal numbers have dropped, and his block numbers have almost gone down by, well, not gone down by a third, gone down to a third. 0.3 versus 0.8. And that's big. He's lost his free throw percentage down from 83 to 75 while increasing his field goal percentage. So while the season might seem like a disaster where you took him, there are reasons, not all of them explainable. The lack of blocks, the lack of steals, the lack of assists is what's really killed him. His scoring's been fine. He's increased his three-pointers. He's increased his shooting efficiency. But an inexplicable drop of almost 10% on his free throws, it really hurts. And that big drop in defensive stuff also hurts. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Oladipo next season, and how they utilize him. But obviously he's not being utilized in the same way that he was in Orlando, especially with that ball handling, with Westbrook taking control of that pretty much all the time. I would have liked to, with the absolute piss poor backup point guards in Oklahoma City, Samaje, Kristen, Norris, Cole, these sort of guys. They should be running Victor Oladipo as their backup point guard in majority of the time, but they don't do that, and that is another thing that I thought they would do more often to get those assist numbers back to 3.5 or 4 assists per game. But we're obviously not at that level for Vic, unfortunately, at the moment. All right, let's move on and let's talk about these games now. There were 9 of them on Saturday for us to talk about, so let's get into those right now. The first one of those, the Atlanta Hawks and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Here is your Exhibit 1 of why you shouldn't be playing fantasy at this point of the year. The Hawks were without Thabo Sefolosha. That's fine. We haven't had Thabo Sefolosha around for a while. They were also without Kent Bazemore. They were also without Dennis Schroeder. They were also without Paul Millsap, and they were also without Dwight Howard. We knew that Millsap was going to rest. We had no idea that Howard was going to rest also. Schroeder did hurt his foot at the end of the Hawks' last game against the Celtics, and he sat out because of that, and Bazemore sat out because his knee is bothering him, and he has an overall lack of basketballing ability. So when you go and then look at the minutes, Mike Budenholzer just said, all right, everyone, you're getting 20 minutes a game. No one's playing over 26. The highest minutes went to Timmy Hardaway at 26, and the lowest minutes went to Mike Dunleavy at 20. And that's an absolute nightmare in terms of being able to predict stuff for fantasy, DFS, or seasonal. Now, when Kent, Dennis, Paul, Dwight all return, any potential value of Chrissy Humphries, 24 minutes of DeAndre Bembry, 26 minutes of Malcolm Delaney, who'd been out of the rotation, 20 minutes of Ryan Kelly, all this shit just disappears. This was a game where Taurean Prince in the last one played 40 minutes, and he played 25 in this one, even with everyone out. Yeah, some nice performances. Hardaway should be owned. He had 22, 2, and 5. Another good night from him. Mick Dunleavy dropped in 20 with 4 triples. Really hard to rely upon that. Mike Muscala had 13, 6 and 5, but you're introducing two big men back to that rotation with Millsap and Howard, and his minutes are going to evaporate. Malcolm Delaney dialed up 8 dimes, and Jose Calderon had 7, but one of them's not going to play at all, and the other one's going to be limited to very, very few minutes when Schroeder returns. So, just another example of this this end of season bullshit that goes on, and this isn't even the worst of it. The weird thing is, they beat the Cavs in a game that LeBron James played 41 minutes. Yes, I know the Cavs want to lock up this number 1 seed, but LeBron playing 41 minutes, at some point this is going to bite him, and it's going to bite the Cavs on the ass. You hope it doesn't. Nobody wants it to happen, unless you're some sort of tough guy LeBron hater. Nobody wants LeBron James to get injured. But this mismanagement, or what I perceive as mismanagement, is frustrating. Channing Frye started in place of Tristan Thompson. He had 16 and 5 with a pair of threes and a pair of blocks. Now, Thompson was initially ruled out for 2 games. This is the second game, so we have to assume he's a decent chance of returning on Sunday, and that's going to limit any value Frye may have. While Kyrie Irving left this game with some knee issues, did come back in, but then complained after the game, saying on his day off he had really bad knee pain. It's still left over from the surgery he had after the fractured kneecap. He thinks it's going to be something that's going to always be with him. Now, he still played well. He had 18 and 7 within 33 minutes, but there's a chance that he doesn't play on Sunday, so that's going to open up the possibility of Darren Williams becoming a streaming option there. Kevin Love had a 15 and 15 double-double there also. J.R. Smith went back to pre-All-Star, pre-recent run. J.R. Smith, he had 3 points in 33 minutes on 1 of 6 shooting. That 3 points was a triple, so if you're streaming him for threes, that's not a completely disastrous result, but that's really all you should be considering him as a specialist and a streaming 3-point option. Let's go to the next game. That is the Miami Heat and the Toronto Raptors. Yes, the NBA's 6th man of the year in our own hearts. Jim Johnson, 22 and 10 with a triple, with 3 assists, with 3 steals, with 2 blocks. He has been an absolute gem this season, and this is just hearkening back. Just remember that when he was out of the league and he got signed mid-season by the Grizzlies, this is what he was doing in a very limited role. Always baffling how underused he was in Toronto. Don't even get me started on what happened with him in Chicago. But he has been ridiculous. He is going to get paid next year, and he is going to be one of the more interesting free agents and fantasy players for next year. Joshie Richardson, this is also what we thought Josh could be in the preseason before that MCL tear. No Dwayne Wade, no Chris Bosh. Richo's going to start, and he's going to put up these numbers. He's a guy that's a top 50 player over the last 2 weeks. He got 10, 2, and 4 here, so the assists, 4 assists, really nice, but it's the defensive numbers that are really killing it for him. 3 steals and 1 block. He's averaging 1.7 blocks and 1.7 steals in the last 2 weeks. As a shooting guard, that's bananas. He should be owned everywhere, yes. When Dion Waiters returns, that probably will affect Joshie, but I reckon Richo is going to be primed for a massive, massive season next year, and he hasn't even shot the ball well. If he can start to shoot the ball well, like he did in his rookie year, he's got the ability to contribute those assists, steals, blocks, and then if you just put threes and points as a bonus on top of that, it's huge. Love Joshie. Goran Dragic, 18, 1 and 1, not his best night, while Whiteside the same, 12 and 10 on just 29% shooting. Could have been an absolute monster for Whiteside, but the shots just wouldn't go down. But Lee Wilkinson seeing Lagwagon, love it. You know what, Lee, so do I. They're my favorite band. I've seen them. How many times have I seen Lagwagon? I think it's 5. Met all the guys in the band. Bought him a beer. Good. That was a good night. Carlos Lopez says, "Hey Joshie." Hey Carlos, how are you? That's not a question. That's just a statement. So, how you going? All right, back to the Heat. The Duke Wayne Ellington. This is why he becomes a streaming 3-point option when you get down to desperation territory. 12 points, 20 minutes, all of those 12 coming on triples, 4 threes. And that's why I harp on about guys like J.R. Smith or players whose value is solely derived from 3-pointers, when you can pick up guys like the Duke or Jordy Crawford or Kyle Korver or guys like that who can come in and hit 2 or 3 each game. And that is something to always keep in mind. Now, Lukey Babbitt was out of this one, so that allowed Jim Johnson to start and play more minutes, and Okaro White got some extra playing time. Onto the Raptors. Corey Joseph, 26 minutes. So he's playing a lot at the 2 because Kyle Lowry played 36 minutes. So there's obviously only 12 backup point guard minutes there. So we're seeing a lot of Corey Joseph backing up DeMar DeRozan. And for the second consecutive game, that has pushed Norm Powell out of the rotation, which does make my heart sad. But Corey Joseph, 14, 4, and 3 with 3 steals and 2 triples. These numbers from Corey are probably even more impressive than what he did when he was the starter. He's more a 14-team league guy, but it is something to pay attention to. DeRozan had 38 and 6, while Lowry in his second game back, the shot wasn't there, but 12, 7, and 6 with 2 steals is pretty bloody good. And Jonas Valanciunas. 30 minutes for Jonas, 9 and 10 with 2 blocks. That's not a superb night, but it is very heartwarming to see finally, after 5 years, Dwayne Casey realizes that shit, we probably should just play this guy a decent chunk of minutes. Not this 26 minutes, not this 19 minutes, not this 21-minute bullshit that he was experimenting with. It makes me feel good. Serge Ibaka, 11 and 9 with 3 triples. And the wing combination of PJ Tucker and DeMario Carroll combined for 7 points, and all of those went to DeMario Carroll. They are not good for fantasy. They can be streamed for steals, especially Tucker, but they're not great as fantasy options. Lee Wilkinson's throwing in. Luke Smith, sorry. Who is the Jimmy Johnson they're singing about? And Lee does chime in saying it's the American football coach. I'm 100% sure it's not. It's about schoolyard bullying, and it's about, from what I understand, that Jimmy Johnson in the song is just a generic sort of name based on childhood experiences from Joey K. But I don't think it's got anything to do with former Cowboys, Dolphins, Hurricanes coach Jimmy Johnson. Almost 100% sure it's about a kid they went to school with, is what my understanding is, but I'll have to work that out exactly. But that's my understanding of it. Luke and Lee. Let's move on to the next game. I like these additional questions that get thrown in here. Let's go to the next game. It is the Knicks. Yes, the New York Knicks and the Memphis Grizzlies. Unsurprisingly, Kristaps Porzingis was out. Carmelo Anthony was out as well, and Lance Thomas was out. We're not seeing Thomas again. I don't think we're seeing Porzingis again. We might see one more from Melo. I'm not 100% sure on that. But the Knicks, once again, changing up the starting lineup. But this is what they should have done initially. Not this Marshall Plumlee is starting at the 4 bullshit. Maurice Ndua comes back in, and this guy can be actually a decent player. Ndua played 29 minutes. He had 15 and 7 with a steal and 3 blocks. I think that with those sort of numbers, with his ability to put up fantasy stats, with the fact that we're not going to see Porzingis most likely, I think Ndua is not a terrible ad. He's a guy that if I'm in 16-team leagues, I'd be looking at him. 12-team leagues, it's not far off because he can put up these numbers. Justin Holiday started. Another move I can get behind. So Hornacek, he's getting a relatively large tick here from me just for those moves. It doesn't make up for all the other dickery that's gone on throughout the season. But yeah, that's what needs to happen. Justin Holiday, 12, 2, and 2 with 3 steals and 2 triples. He becomes an elite an elite. Whenever I say words like that and get my tongue tied, it just reminds me of that dog with the Stephen with the PH. If anyone has seen that, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. If not, I will tweet it out. The Stephen with a PH dog. I'm sure if you just type in dog Stephen with a PH, you will see exactly what I'm talking about. Anyway, he can become an elite steals streaming option, Justin Holiday, if he's going to start. Bill Hernan-Gomez, 29 minutes, 11 and 10 with 2 steals. That's solid, and that's probably ownable, while Koch had 9 and 3 with a steal and a block in his 20 minutes. Sasha Vucic still played 21, but at least he's not starting and playing 36, while rugged Ronnie Baker, 2, 2, and 7, really just an assist steals streaming sort of a guy, far from a must-own player. Courtney Lee also saw his minutes reduced down to 28 in this one. He had 16, 3, and 3. He's more a 14-teamer, I think, but obviously that's a pretty decent performance from Lee. And with Porzingis and Melo out and Derrick Rose out, of course, that Lee is going to get a bump in his usage, and that might work in his favour. Mike Conley returned for the Grizz. He had 31, 3, and 6 with 7 triples. Another huge night there, while Marc Gasol, 16 and 10 with 3 blocks and 2 triples. A big night there, although he shot just the 31%. If you looked at Mike Conley and Marc Gasol and said one shot 31% and the other shot 71%, I don't think you'd assign them to Conley Conley with 71 and Gasol with 31. Jermichael Green played 29 minutes, and because Green played 29, Marc Gasol played 34, Zach Randolph played 15. So that little run of Randolph being an ownable guy, that's done. Get rid of him. I don't think Jermichael is worth holding on to. Tone Allen played just 19 minutes also here, 10 and 4. And with everyone for the Grizzlies healthy, save for Chandler Parsons, who's obviously not going to play this season, the value of a lot of these guys like Allen and Randolph becomes very sporadic. Vince Carter knocked in 4 triples, added a steal, 2 blocks in his 12 points in 28 minutes, an elite type streaming option, but more a deeper league staple type of a player. Andy Harrison with the backup point guard minutes, he had 0 in 22. And let's move on to the next game. Now we have a comment from Matt Fester, up late in New Jersey. Matt, you are up late. Now let me work, what's the time over there? It's about 1:30 a.m. I'm guessing, up late in New Jersey, and I thought I'd tune in. Thanks for all the entertainment this season, Josh. I destroyed my league this year. Beers on me if you ever make your way to New Jersey, New York. Thank you, Matt. Now, well done for winning your league. Congratulations. I have been to New York twice. I don't think that I'll be heading over there this time in my hopeful trip over there in July. I'm not sure I'll be heading over to New Jersey, New York. I'll be doing more West Coast stuff, but you never know. But thank you, Matt. Thanks for tuning in and staying up late and watching this. All right, let's talk about this next game, and that is Detroit and Houston. We talked about it yesterday that the Pistons were going to get more Boban Marjanovic and more Henry Allenson in, and they did. We didn't know what degree that they were going to do it to. They went hard. Van Gundy said, we're out of the playoffs. Screw this shit. Let's go. Boban played 28 minutes, 27 and 12 with 2 assists. Now we know that Marjanovic is a guy that puts up sick numbers, really, in limited minutes. His per 36 numbers were brilliant for the Spurs last year. So if he's playing 27 a night moving forward, you add him. I added him in a 12-teamer today. In a 12-team Roto league, I added him. I think that you should consider that. Now, Henry Allenson in his 26, 15 and 11. Now, he has been possibly the worst first-round rookie of this entire season, and that's even including guys that aren't even here, like Yabesele and Zizic and Korkmaz. That's how bad he's been, but this is a good showing. And something that I did mention yesterday that I thought we might see is we'll see the tackle box out of the rotation. He was done. We saw Aaron Baines out of the rotation, and we saw Andre Drummond play just 20 minutes, 8 and 9 for Drummond. Marcus Morris, 16 minutes, 2, 1 and 1. If you own Morris, forget it. He's gone. Andre Drummond, I would probably still hold, but could be gone. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, 23 minutes, 2, 5 and 3. Get rid of him. Toby Harris, 22 minutes. Might hold on to him, 17 and 6 with 3 triples, but it looks like we're going to get Boban. We're going to get Allenson, and we're going to get Stan Johnson, who played 32 here and had 13, 4 and 4 with 3 triples. He has been bad this year, Stan. There's no denying that, but if they're going to force feed him some of these minutes and take Marcus's minutes and take Toby's minutes, then he could be a useful streaming type option, but he's more a guy that if I'm in a 16-teamer, I would add maybe a 14-team, and that's probably where Allenson fits as well. We also saw Reggie Bullock get extra run, 6, 3 and 4 in his 25 minutes, but just another team that, just packed it in, basically, and let's see what these guys can give us. And without having really set roles, like Boban's not playing 30, Allenson's not playing. They're not saying these are our 5 starters now that are going to play 30. We're going to have 8 guys play 25, and that can make it difficult. Now, Ish Smith still played 30. He had 20 points, 3 boards, and 5 assists, and he should be owned everywhere, of course. Let's talk about the Rockets. There was no Clint Capella. He was resting in this game, so we had Nene starting. He played just the 13 minutes before. He packed it in for the night, 8, 6 and 2, and Ryan Anderson returned, and he packed it in after halftime as well. 13 minutes for Rhino, 9 and 3 with 3 triples. Not a guy to own, Anderson. With Capella out, with Nene limited, the table, Montrezl Harrell played 27 minutes. He had 13, 2 and 2 with 2 blocks. If he gets the minutes, you know he's going to contribute. We have seen that all season from Harrell, especially when Capella was out with that fractured leg. But if everyone's healthy, he's going to play very limited time. Now, with Rhino back, Lou Williams and Eric Gordon, they saw their minutes come down. 22 for Lou, 31 for Gordo. Lou was still all right, 15 points on 8 shots. Gordo had 13 and 5 on 14 shots and hit 3 triples, but this is something I mentioned the other day, is that their role, their 32 minutes or 37 minutes, and the big production they were putting up when Anderson was out, it's not going to be there. So if you did need to move on, you should consider both of those guys droppable, and I'll stand by that. Trev Ariza, 6 and 7 in his 35 on 1 of 11 shooting. Was not ideal at all for Trev, but he'll be fine moving forward. Beverly had 6, 13 and 5. A very weird point guard looking stat line for Pat Bev. Also good to see Chinana Onwaku play. I reckon he can be a decent fantasy contributor. It's not going to happen on this team this year, but he is a name to watch for the future. Ronald Coley, watching live. He's up late in Chicago. It's midnight over there. Thank you, Josh, for all your analysis. It's helped me do the best I've ever done in NBA DFS. No worries, Ronald. You are a pretty staunch supporter of this show, and you listen all the time. I know I always see you chiming in on Twitter and on Facebook. So congratulations for everything that you have done this season in your DFS action. Let's move across now to the next game. It is the San Antonio Spurs and the Dallas Mavericks. No Danny Green, no Manu, no Kawhi, no LaMarcus, no Pau Gasol. We knew this all before the game. And then Pop springs on us that he's going to start Pat Mills over Tone Parker. And then Parker didn't play at all as well. Just another game that was up shit creek in terms of being able to judge what's going to happen. And this is the game that I thought there was a bit of trap worthiness for DFS, but a few of the guys that we mentioned went off. One guy that I didn't really talk about because I didn't know that Tone Parker was going to be out was Bryn Forbes, who played 29 minutes and had 27 points. He knocked in 4 triples and had 6 assists. That's a huge night from Bryn. He's been playing about 20 a night with Manu out, with Green out. Still played less than most of the other guys, but that's a huge performance. It's also very much so a career high for the rookie. Davis Bertans started in place of LaMarcus, 19 and 4 with 5 triples and 2 steals. Now, Aldridge is going to be back Saturday, so this is going to mean nothing. Neither is the 16, 13 and 5 from David Lee. Neither is the 10 and 13 from Dwayne Dedmon, even though I really like Dedmon. He just doesn't get that opportunity. And my boy Kyle Anderson, 9, 10, 5, 3, 2. That's what he does. He contributes right across the board, but with everyone likely to be back, maybe not Danny, maybe not Manu, which could open up some John Simmons, some Bryn Forbes, and some Kyle Anderson minutes, but it's not going to be enough to make them 12-team league worthy. They're just things to keep in your mind for the next time if it happens that all of these Spurs guys gets rested, which might not happen again, but it could very well happen again during next week. So just be aware that these other guys like Bertans, like Anderson, who I will continue to honk on Anderson's horn.
Giggity.
And say that he's a good player and he's a good fantasy contributor and he's better than John Simmons. And I want to see him get an opportunity somewhere. It's not going to happen really at this team, but I would like to see it. Now on to the Dallas Mavericks. They didn't rest anybody until the game started. Seth Curry was out. We're not seeing Seth again. That's not official. That's not confirmed. That is my gut feeling. So you can go ahead and drop Seth. But what they did is they started their normal guys. Wes Matthews, Dirk, Nerlens, Yogi Ferrell, the pencil. And then they just said, nah, we're done. Halftime, you guys are off. And that is, the dickery that really it's bothersome because there's no ads based on that. Now, Yogi Ferrell feels pretty confident for 26 to 30 minutes. He had 11, 2, and 5. It's not spectacular, but it's useful, clearly. Nerlens Noel, 14 minutes, 8 and 9. He is not playing big minutes the rest of the way. Forget that. Drop him. Drop Dirk. Wes Matthews, 6, 4, and 5. Those assists from what the hell is going on with Wes Matthews? Why is he focusing on passing? I haven't watched a huge amount of Mavericks games recently, but the numbers just keep pouring in for his big assist games, and it is really a weird development from Wes Matthews, but it's good. Yeah, JJ Barea played 11 minutes. This is just, and sometimes you get resting and tanking, and it opens up big opportunities. But in a situation like this, everyone's playing 15, 16 minutes. It opens up nothing for nobody. Yet the guys who played big minutes, Dorian Finney-Smith played 30 minutes and had 4 points. Like, he's bad. He's a bad fantasy contributor. That's just what happens with these guys. Dirk was still alright, 8 and 3 with 3 blocks, but move on. 10-team leagues, 12-team leagues. Dirk's done. Curry is done. Noel is done. Barea is done. Matthews, not feeling it. The pencil, I might hold Harrison Barnes, but his ranking recently hasn't been that high anyway, and his production hasn't been that awesome. So I wouldn't have a problem with moving on from him. Arnold Woodley Jr. says it's 1:37 a.m. in St. Croix, in the, as you would say, the Caribbean, as we would say, the Caribbean. Actually, Arnold, you're in the Caribbean. Do you say Caribbean or Caribbean? Because we say Caribbean over here. Showing love to the podcast. Thank you, Arnold, for showing that love. And how do you say it? I know that everyone in the States calls it Caribbean, but you live in St. Croix. So how are you pronouncing Caribbean or Caribbean? interesting. I like this. I like this interaction with all you guys who are watching and your stories. It's good stuff. All right, let's move on to the next game. The New Orleans Pelicans and the Denver Nuggets. Hey, guess what? Another game of weirdness in rotations. And this is, again, something that we did mention yesterday, that the Pelicans were going to start limiting their players and playing guys like Sheikh Diallo and Quinn Cook more minutes. Boogie was out. I don't think you're seeing Boogie. They play again Saturday. I would be stunned if DeMarcus Cousins plays on Saturday. Anthony Davis. This is what Elvin Gentry said with Anthony Davis. He said if he plays 30 minutes on Friday, he'll probably sit out on Saturday. He played 24 minutes. So what does that mean? Does that mean that he'll play on Saturday? Does that mean he'll play 6 minutes on Saturday? There's a chance you get no Davis on Saturday. And I don't think you're getting Boogie. But the minutes were down. Drew played 24. Davis played 24. Dante Cunningham started for Boogie. He played 22. And that unleashed one of my old favourites, Alexis Ajinça, who played 28 minutes. He had 15 and 7 with a steal and a block. When Davis is out and Ajinça plays in his spot, he puts up big numbers. Go back and look at the end of last season and see how good Ajinça was. He can be a standard league contributor if Cousins and Davis happen to be out. So watch that. One of my biggest hidden boys, I reckon, is Sheikh Diallo. 12 minutes for Sheikh. It took a while for him to get into the game. I believe he played the entire fourth quarter. That's it. 6-3 with a block. If he plays 28 minutes, he is going to be a 12-team league guy. I can 98% guarantee you if he plays 28 minutes, he will put up top 100 numbers. So he is a name to watch, especially if we get the early word that Boogie and Davis are out. Sheikh is the guy you want to look at. Now, there's still Donatas Montejunas there, and there is still Ajinça, and I would probably take Ajinça over Diallo, but he's a name to watch. Eatwan Moore suffered an ankle sprain. He lasted 18 minutes. Now, he started in place of Tim Frazier, who went from starting to a DNP CD, even with Drew Holiday playing just 24 minutes, as they got Quinn Cook more playing time there behind Drew. But Jordy Crawford played 30. He dropped in 20 points. He had 3 assists. He is going to be an exemplary addition for points and for threes. It's not going to be for everyone, but he is going to do this moving forward. I'm pretty confident about that. It's not like Dante Cunningham and Solomon Hill are going to start taking up these shots and just using the ball in a massive way. Arnold Woodley replies back, it's Caribbean. Caribbean, exactly. That is how we say it. That is how you say it. Americans, let's get rid of this Caribbean. Unless I'm mispronouncing your phonetic spelling. Caribbean. That's how we're going. Thank you, Arnold. Denver. Jokic, 23, 12, and 5, 2 threes and 2 steals on 69% shooting.
Giggity.
Yeah, look, he's good. I'll tell you who else is good.
Nice, Gary.
20 points for Gaza, 37 minutes, 3 triples, 6 boards, 9 assists, 1 steal, 50% shooting. All right, I don't make bold statements very often. Or maybe I do. Gary Harris will be a top 50 guy next year. Now, I probably wouldn't draft him there, but he will finish next year as a top 50 player in fantasy. He's just really good. Now, with no Jameer Nelson, Manny Mudiay played 18. He had 9, 2, and 4. There was also no Fart and Will Barton. Mudiay is going to be an assists streaming type of guy. Ken Fareed started 17 minutes, 7 and 6. Deep leagues there, obviously, while the Rooster had 13, 4 and 2. I'd like to see Juancho get a little bit more playing time, and I think if the Nuggets do get eliminated, we might get a big Juancho game here at the end. But otherwise, yeah, it's Murray, Jokic, Gaz is such a sexy trio, and then you add Juancho into that. And then we've got some pretty exciting stuff coming up for the Nuggets' future, and we're seeing a fair bit of that on show here. They smashed the Pelicans 122-106. Lee Wilkinson, it's 3:10 p.m. in Adelaide. I'm aware of the time in Adelaide. Watching Tigers versus Eagles. What's the score, Lee? I don't have the footy scores up in front of me. Let me know. Let me know what the score is, because Bulldogs are playing tonight. We've got the Dockers, so hopefully we get a nice victory there. Hopefully, always fingers crossed. Let's go to the next game. It's Minnesota and Utah. One thing that Tom Thibodeau is doing is he's not going easy on these guys. He's not reducing minutes of his starters. They're out of the playoffs. It doesn't matter. Townsy played 32. He had 32 and 13. Ravishing Rick Rubio played 37 minutes. He had 26, 3 and 12. in a game they lost by 7 points. Wigo played 37. He had 25 and 5, and this is obviously helping fantasy teams. While Gorgie Jeng was the one to get limited, 27 minutes, 6 and 5 with 2 steals and a block. Still a productive evening. Now, Chrissy Dunn's gone from 28 minutes a night to 10 minutes, 3 points, 3 assists. He's bad. He's dynasty only, and even then, I have a very limited opinion of him, while Brandon Rush had 6 points in his 28 minutes. Onto the Jazz, they were without George Hill, but Derek Favors returned, and he looked good, which is probably the first time you've been able to say that all season. Favors played 17 minutes and had 13 and 5. Now, it's not an invitation to go and grab him everywhere, because 17 minutes is nothing. And based on what we've seen this year, he's not going to do that often, if at all. But it was good to see him back. With Favors back, we only had Rudy Gobert playing 27 minutes. He had foul trouble, so that limited him there as well. 16 and 5 with 2 blocks. While Joe Johnson still played 33 minutes, 22 and 3 with 4 triples, a steal and a block. 80% shooting from Joe obviously helps, but his value is dipping quite a bit now that Derek has returned. Gordo Hayward, huge night from Hayward. The Jazz clinched the division title. I remember getting into plenty of arguments with people in the offseason about the Jazz. I think I picked them as the 4 seed. How can you pick them as the 4 seed? They're never been in the playoffs. They would have walked into the 4th seed this season if it hadn't been for millions of injuries. They still might get there, but probably unlikely. But they're definitely in the playoffs. We know that. Clinching that division title. Hayward had 39, 3 and 5 with 4 triples and 2 steals on 64% shooting. While Jingle and Joe Ingles started over at Rocket Rodney Hood, he had 11, 5 and 8 with 2 steals and 2 triples in 34 minutes for Ingles. More a 14-team league sort of a guy. But obviously when that opportunity comes, he does put up the numbers. Now, as for Rocket, he had 6 points in 21 minutes. Not really much to see there. While Shelvin Mack, who'd been pretty good in place of George Hill, struggled 3, 6 and 4, but still got the bulk of those minutes, playing 29 minutes, while Dante Exum played 23 and hit 3 threes, but that's a rarity for him. The Oklahoma City Thunder and the Phoenix Suns, a very, very weird loss. The Suns win by 21. Just exactly what they didn't need, but we'll get onto the ramifications of that a little bit later. Russ Westbrook, looking for that triple-double in a huge way. Didn't get there, but does average a triple-double for the season now. 23, 12, and 8. If your field goal percentage was close this week, it's not anymore. He was 24% on 25 attempts, so your percentage just got absolutely annihilated. Kobe Bryant would be happy for a 6 of 25 performance. He was 9 of 9 from the line, but congratulations to Russell Westbrook. That's an enormous feat. It's a ridiculous feat to average a triple-double for the season, and still wants that one more triple-double in order to get himself the most triple-doubles in a season. But the end of this game was a little laughable. Tajah Gibson, 16 minutes. Just give him more minutes. 12 and 4 with a block, while Enes Kanter had 17 and 4. Neither of those guys are 12-team league guys. Kanter more than Gibson, though. While Steve Adams returned to some level of form, 12 and 11 in his 33 minutes. That's not an indication for me to go and grab him. There was no Alex Abrines. There was no Andre Robertson. So Doug McDirt started. And this is something that I've harped on about McDirt for a long time. He is just not good. He is, especially in fantasy circles, he is a bad fantasy player. And we saw it here. The amount of people I had asking me, oh yeah, McDermott to Oklahoma City, he's a must-add. No, he's, yes, in a 30-team league, sure, add him. He just does nothing. 11 points in 40 minutes, 2 triples, 5 boards, and the standard McDermott, no assists, no steals, no blocks. He's a 3-point streamer, and that's really about it. On to the Suns. Devin Booker was huge again, took 29 shots, hit 13 of them, ended with 37 points, hit 5 triples, had 5 boards, 4 assists and a steal. So good numbers there, while TJ Warren was enormous as well. 23 and 16 for TJ in 33 minutes after being inexplicably reduced in his playing time in the last game. Clearly, Warren's a guy that you want to own. While Tyler Ulis had 12 points, 5 assists and 2 steals. Someone literally yesterday, I think, or maybe the day before, sent me, who do I add off my waiver wire because I need to drop, I don't remember who the player was, and Tyler Ulis was still available. I mean, what's going on? Add Ulis. Marquise Chris did not get into foul trouble, had 1 foul, played 14 minutes. Now, I'm recording this just after these games have finished, so I don't have a reason as to why that happened, aside from the fact that Earl Watson potentially is a bad coach. Maybe, who knows? just a weird scenario. Jared Dudley played 34. He had 11, 4 and 3. That's over 30 minutes for 2 consecutive games for Dudley. That's putting him into consideration for 16 teamers, maybe even 14 teamers. While Big Sauce had 11 and 4 in his 27. And Alex Len, 9 and 10 with a steal and a block. I'd say that Len and Sauce are both 14 teamers and streamable 12-team league guys. The last game of the night, who can tank the hardest? The Sacramento Kings and Los Angeles Lakers. It turns out the Kings can tank harder. They were still without Costa Koufos. They rested Ty Lawson for the second consecutive game. They rested Garrett Temple, but they brought back everyone else, and this is just a continuing roulette wheel, basically, of who is in and who is out. It's a dartboard, the Dave Yeager resting dartboard. I don't think we see Koufos again. He's arrested for 5 consecutive games, but in saying that, we saw Aflalo arrested for 4 consecutive games, and he's back. So I think you're going to look at consistency from Will Cauley-Stein, despite him playing just 23 minutes here, only accumulating 2 fouls. He had 14 and 7 and 3 blocks, so the numbers are still fine. So he's going to be consistent. Bud Hield with the tank ceiling turnover at the end of the game. He played 30 minutes, had 17, 1 and 2 with 3 triples. He is fine for the points and threes. I think Skal Labissiere is going to be pretty fine for his minutes, but his production will be up and down now. It was a great matchup for him against the Lakers, 19 and 3 in 33 with 2 blocks, and he'll get these high 20s in minutes, but there'll be some nights where he gets overpowered. Guys like Darren Collison are going to be in and out. He had 15, 5 and 10 here, Collison, in 28 minutes, but he's just as likely to not play in the next game. Benny McLemore had 9, 3 and 2. He's a 3-point streamer. Langston Galloway dished 5 assists. He's an assist streamer because they're going to play 20 minutes a night here moving forward. Georgios Papagiannis had a double-double, 10 and 10 in 25, and that's a deeper league source of rebounding. But overall, the team's a mess, but they got the result they wanted. They lost. The Lakers have now won 3 consecutive games, potentially ruining their franchise rebuild for the foreseeable future. And that is the truth. Maybe they can get out of it, but if they finish outside the top 3, and they're third at the moment, so they need one team to jump into the lottery. And remember, last season was the first time in I don't even know how long that the top 3 remained the same, that no one leapt forward. That was the first time that had happened in an extraordinarily long time. So they need one team to jump into the lottery, the Lakers, and they lose their pick to the Sixers, and they also lose their 2019 first round pick, unprotected, to the Magic. It's a disaster. But they've won 3 in a row. Julius Randle and Luke Walton put their starters back in late. I thought maybe we weren't going to see D'Angelo again. We weren't going to see Jordy Clarkson again. We might not see Brandon Ingram again. But no, they were all there. Randle had 25 and 6 in 34 minutes. It was a good Julius Randle game. Russell had 13, 5 and 5 in 33, while Clarkson had 12, 3 and 6 in 30 minutes. It looks like they're going to play the season out. Ingram, 14 and 2 with 2 steals in 25, but he is going to be limited by this minutes restriction. In one of the oddest decisions of the night, David Nwaba was rested. David Nwaba, he has played a month. He is bad. Why is he resting? Why? Now, Larry Nance played 28. He had 7 and 11 with 3 steals. I think Nance should be owned pretty much across the board. But the Lakers, great to get a victory. Is it? Or is it not? Because that's a franchise changing, potentially franchise changing, especially after the Suns won, which was bad for the Suns. But to win 3 in a row is horrendous for the Lakers, and that's why the system is dumb, and that's why they should be installing my unweighted lottery for the top 10 picks. Change a lot of this stuff, I think, or a lot of this tanking, or general weird. It doesn't change the fact that the Lakers not losing their pick, but it changes a lot of the weirdness associated with the whole thing. All right, I'm going to now take a quick break, and then we're going to return, and we're going to look at DFS for Saturday's game. Okay. before we get into the perfect DFS portion of the show, or the DFS portion of the show in general. Arnold Woodley says, I'm interested to hear your take on Durant. Is he worth a roster spot? Well, apparently he's back on Saturday. He's making his return. And the Warriors said he is going to be without a minutes limit. Add him. I don't 100% agree for a guy coming back from an MCL tear that you're just going to throw ahead of time. A guy coming back from an MCL tear ahead of time, you're not going to limit his playing time, seems absolute ridiculous, dangerous. I don't even know what other words. It seems stupid to me to throw a guy like that out there with no limit. But 27 minutes of Durant is enough to be owned, so go and grab him. He's a must-own guy. Arnold, I think you do have to make that move, even if they're lying about minutes limits. Let's talk perfect DFS. Fanduel, Ravishing Rick Rubio 44.6 and the Blue Arrow 43.3. Jim Harden 62.8 and Devin Booker 50. Kyle Anderson 38.5 and Gordo Hayward 52.1. Jimmy Johnson 44.5 and Dave Lee 36.9. And at centre, Boban 44.4 for 417.1, and that cost $57,800. On DraftKings, Jim Harden 68.75, the Blue Arrow 46, Kyle Anderson 39, Towns 54.75, Boban 46.5, Bryn Forbes at 41.25, Jimmy Johnson 49, and Gordo Hayward at 55.25 for a total of 400.5, and that cost $49,400. There are 8 games on Saturday, so let's get into those. Remember that they do start a little bit earlier, with the first game kicking off at 5 p.m. Then you've got a 6 p.m. game, and then you've got your 2 6 p.m. games, and you've got your 2 7 p.m. games. So check your contests to see which games actually are part of it. The first one is the Chicago Bulls. They are taking on the Brooklyn Nets. I don't have any spread release for this one because we're still waiting on a bit of injury news. Dwayne Wade is questionable. I think that is probable side of questionable. I think that Dwayne plays, while Rajon Rondo is doubtful with his sprained right wrist, which cost him the last game. On the net side of things, Shawnee Kilpatrick is questionable with hamstring tightness. He missed the last game there as well. Now, if Rondo misses, which we'll talk about that in a sec because that's what I'm assuming, but if Wade misses, it opens up some Paulie Zipser minutes and some Denzel Valentine minutes, but not enough to make me too excited. While if Shawnee Kilpatrick's out, Isaiah Whitehead, Spencer Dinwiddie, KJ McDaniels, and Archie Goodwin all get a boost, but they just become GPP guys, especially guys like Whitehead and Dinwiddie would be the two who gain you the most value there. Let's talk point guards, assuming Rondo is out. Jaren Grant was a monster in the last game. Really weird thing to say. 35 points for Grant at 3,800. That looks fantastic. But we've seen previously when Rondo's out that Grant comes in and he plays 24 minutes and he does nothing. And that's with Wade back, which is what I assume will happen here. We'll have Wade and Butler handling the ball more, and we will have much less of Jaren Grant. So to me, it would be a GPP option, but that's really about it. Jeremy Lin is at 6,300, and we know Lin has been crushing it. I think he is he's definitely worth a look at that. At 67 on DraftKings, that might be pushing it a little bit high, but I'm not totally scared off using him at that sort of a price tag. I do prefer it though on FanDuel with Jezza. Isaiah Whitehead at 3,600, Spencer Dinwiddie at 4,100. They become options more if Kilpatrick happens to miss. At shooting guard, Kilpatrick, and if he plays, there's marginal upside, but I'm not really interested. While Karis LeVert had a big game in the last one, he put up 26 points in his last game at 4,100. That's a decent return, but we've seen him get limited by coaching many of times and just by rookie fades, I guess, is what's happened to Karis a lot of that time as well. So he's not a strong option to me here. Denzel Valentine the same, and I wouldn't be throwing Wade out there in his first game back. At small forward, Rondé Hollis-Jefferson 4,700 had been looking good until he got Atkinson. He's averaging just 20 over the last 5. He's got GPP upside here for sure, and at 4,800 on DraftKings, it's the same sort of boat. Well, Jim Butler at 10.5, I think that is absolutely fine to throw Jim in there. You get your 49 to 55 sort of range. I reckon that's where he can produce, and that's a fine use of that sort of cash for Jim Butler. Paulie Zips are no way. Power forward Nikola Mirotic, 5,800, another 35-pointer for Mirotic in the last game. He averages 31 across the last 5, and unless Fred Hoiberg does something dumb, he's going to play close to 30, and he's going to be able to beat that value. Now, there's a real chance that, there's a chance that Hoiberg comes and says, all right, let's decide to make our team lose and play Bobby Portis more. But I'd be pretty okay with getting Mirotic out there. Now, as for Bob, he actually dropped in a 24-pointer in 21 minutes, which is a nice double-double there for Portis. At 3,800, he does have that tournament upside, because if they do let him go, sometimes the numbers come, but very rarely do they. So he's more of obviously a punt guy, but not even a guy that I would throw into optimal GPP lineups. It's more here's my multiple lineup, and I would have him in the player pool. Robin Lopez against his brother. I have no interest in using Robin Lopez here. And Brook Lopez at 6,800 has struggled against Robin in the past as well. I don't think it's a superb option for either of the Lopezes here. Charles Joseph commenting, he's new to the show. Well, welcome, Charles. I hope you are enjoying it. Love it. Oh, there you go. There's the answer. I'm looking forward to next season DFS basketball. Charles, don't have to look forward to next season. There's the whole playoffs to go, man. We're still rolling through DFS stuff throughout the playoffs, so make sure you are still tuning in. And that goes for everyone else listening. I know that people are hesitant to recommend this show to their friends. I wish they would. But now, with DFS happening, but we're going to be talking about all sorts of basketball stuff. So if people want a basketball podcast with an Australian humor bent, which I think I'm funny sometimes, introduce them to the show. Your fantasy season's over in seasonal leagues. Get them involved with the show. Tell people about it. And the audience has kept up pretty well, actually, which I thought in the last couple of seasons it has dropped off post seasonal fantasy leagues going, but the numbers are still cranking up really well. And I think it's a good opportunity as we start talking about more playoff stuff and then real life NBA draft and free agency with fantasy slants on it as well. Introduce your friends to it. But as for you, Charles, playoff DFS is still going, and that is when you should be ramping back up your DFS spend, as opposed to now when it is an absolute shit show, as I've touched on a multitude of times. Let's go to the next game, and that is Boston and Charlotte. The Celtics are favored by 1.5 on the road. The total is 214. The one we want to look for here is Marco Bellinelli, who left last game due to a strained finger. If he is out, Jeremy Lamb gets somewhat of a boost. It's not going to be too much or enough of a boost for me to go, yeah, let's really get stuck into Lamb. But he is a guy, Jeremy Lamb, who we have seen this year in 25 minutes put up numbers that easily return value. So it's not a complete stay away or write-off situation. At point guard, we've got Kemba, we've got Isaiah Thomas. Kemba is a $7,700 player. He is averaging 34 the last 3 times against Boston. He's been in some pretty good form recently himself, aside from the last game where he put up just the 25. This is a matchup that's okay for him. I feel okay about Kemba at 77, and I'm not sure there's much tournament upside there, but I feel like he's a pretty good bet to get high 30s in points, and that's probably enough at that 7,700. As for Isaiah, I like the upside. I like the floor for Thomas here. 8,600 against Kemba Walker. 40 points, I think, is what you should be expecting from Isaiah Thomas. At shooting guard, Nicola Batum, 6,400. He has really turned it around recently with a 34-point average across the last 3. If Bellinelli misses, that does perhaps help Batum slightly as well, so I'd be okay with throwing him out there at that price. Avery Bradley's not doing a huge amount and not enough to cover his $6,000 price tag, while Marcus Smart dropped in a 48-point masterclass in the last one, but at $6,000, I'm not spending $6,000 assuming that's going to happen again. There is no way that I feel confident about that. He's at 53 on DraftKings, so that should inspire a little bit more confidence, but not really. And it's a fade to me. Kid Gilchrist, 4,600. I'll have to say that's a no from me there. He's at 44 on on FanDuel though, Kid Gilchrist, but still not really getting my excitement happening. Jay Crowder at 5,900. That feels like it's too high. Like there's just not enough upside or consistency in what Crowder does. At power forward, Amir Johnson, 38. I don't see it. Frank the Tank, Marvin Williams, I don't really get too excited about those guys either. Cody Zeller at 48, same. I don't think there's much to see with the big men stocks in this game. Al Horford, the same thing as Cody Zeller and Frank and Marvin and all those sort of guys. Joe Sherman, Fournier or Batum? In what sense, mate? Are you talking DFS? Good. It's a good question. I think I would take Batum, because I get the feeling that Fournier may be a little bit limited. He's playing, but we saw it with Terry Ross in the last game, that the Magic might just reduce the playing time to get guys like George Hunt and Garino some extra playing time. So that would scare me off a little bit there with Fournier, as much as I do like him, as much as his price always looks appealing. The next game, the Indiana Pacers and those Orlando Magic. No spread released for this one just yet. Not really sure what they're waiting for. At point guard, Jeff Teague, 6,900.
My name is Jeff.
It sure is. He's been okay, but not great. But this matchup is super tasty for Teague. Now, he is averaging only 31 across the last three, which at 6,900 doesn't help. But this matchup is so good, I don't think we're going to see massive minutes reductions from the Pacers guys. They're still fighting things out. So I think that Teague is an absolutely fine guy to use. Lord Alfred Payton at 76, that is too high, and it takes on too high of a level of risk with the way that the Magic are running things. Now, Payton's been great. He's averaging 40 over the last 5, which is superb. And at 7,600 and you get 40, absolutely fine. That's brilliant. Love it, love it, love it. But I don't have the level of confidence in him. Now, he does have upside. He's got 55-point upside, which at 7,600 is great. Teague's defense is not something that should give us too much fear. So Payton becomes a tournament-type guy. Lancey Stevenson at 36, he's getting minutes in the mid-20s. Hasn't really turned in a huge night. At 3,600, though, he could give us 22 points, 23 points, and that's not an absolute disaster. So I think that Lance, at that price tag, is all right to fill up around a roster without being not a core guy, of course, but being a decently solid guy. He impacts guys like Monte Ellis, of course, and CJ Miles also. Evan Fournier, who we just did touch on, he's at 5,600. He will return, but I think he's a chance to reach that value. I just don't think that he's got brilliant value, especially if they knock 3-4 minutes off his playing time. It's not going to be ideal for him. Hazonia, Meeks had a great game in the last one, but with Fournier back, it's unlikely he reaches those heights. And CJ Watson, who will be the backup point guard in this game after sitting out the last one. I don't think there's enough to see there with him, nor with Garino. At small forward, CJ Miles at minimum salary. He's always a guy that you can throw in case he goes off. But with Lance around, his minutes have been dialed back a bit, but he is a GPP option, while Paulie George at 96, he's been crushing it, averaging 55 over the last 3. Now, 96 is pretty bloody high. And at 93 on DraftKings, it's still pretty high, but I don't hate using Paul George here, especially, and there's a lot of low-priced guys who have got good value, and you can get a couple of low-priced guys in and then go hard on Paul George. So if he doesn't give you 5x and he gives you 4.7x, you should be able to make it up from these other guys maybe going 6, 7, 8 if you've constructed your roster correctly, and getting like a guaranteed 40 out of George will be a pretty good result, I think. Terry Ross... No, no. The minutes are just the worry there. Thaddeus Young, 4,900, has been consistently beating that. I feel pretty good about him here. I think they're going to give him the 30 again, another double chance. While Aaron Gordon at 6,300, that might be pushing a little bit too much. It's a $600 price rise from the last time for Gordon. 66 on DraftKings. It's maybe pushing it just a little bit too high. I don't completely hate it, but I'm not loving it. Miles Turner at 61 has been dreadful, dealing with a finger problem. This is a decent matchup for Miles, but I don't like it at 61. At 57 on DraftKings, I'm more into that, and I do think this could be a big outing. There is a level of risk with Turner, and you have to be willing to take that, of course. While Nikola Vucevic at 82, we've seen plenty of big men really abuse Turner at times this year. Bismack Biyombo played 5 minutes in the last game. I think that Vooch, he dropped 42 in the last outing. He could go for 40 again. I think he's a pretty solid option. It has absolutely started pissing down here out of nowhere, as Luke Smith just says. It's raining. I don't know where it's I don't know where it's come from. It hasn't been. It's just pissing down. Justin Mann says, "I'm done with fantasy." Of course you are, as you should be. Still listen to the pod. Well done. Do you do many podcasts in the off season, Justin? This podcast goes hard. Yes, we do plenty of podcasts in the off season. I think a lot of people would listen to an off season weekly pod. Forget weekly, mate. These are cranking out daily until the NBA draft, pretty much. And then after that is when I head across, hopefully we'll be heading across to Summer League, but before that there'll be free agency pods. And then when I'm over at Summer League, I might take 2 weeks off. and then we're back into doing maybe 3-4 a week after that. So forget weekly, mate. There is going to be NBA content coming from this show consistently, but thank you for listening. All right, let's move on to the next game. Where are we now? We are talking about the Milwaukee Bucks and the Philadelphia 76ers. The Bucks are favored by 6, and the total is 208.5 points. Spanish Chocolate could return, but I doubt that he returns again this year. He still is up in the air about a return date. TJ McConnell should be ready to go after spraining his ankle in the last one. And that's obviously going to help him if Sergio Rodriguez happens to be out here. Let's talk point guards. We'll start with McConnell. He's at 5,700. If Rodriguez is out, which is what we're assuming, I think it's almost a lock that McConnell gets that $5,700 worth of value. This rain, it's seriously, I feel like the roof is going to collapse. How loud is this rain? Jesus, what is going on? I apologize for this background noise. This has come absolutely out of nowhere. And if you're listening to this on the audio version of the podcast later, I might have been able to edit out some of this background noise, but watching live, it is pouring down. Really, really pouring. Yeah, TJ McConnell, 5,700. 6,000 on DraftKings is not as appealing, but it's still pretty good, but not as good. Now, Brogo has been ruled out already, so Dellavedova. We've seen Dally's minutes. He's not played 30 the last two because Gary Payton II is getting some of those extra minutes, so that renders both of those guys pretty much useless. Shooting guard, Yanni, 10,000. Let's go. Let's get our 50 out of Yanni. It's like a Paul George. Maybe he gets 47. Maybe he gets 48. That's pretty good. Same with Jim Butler, around that same sort of mark. So I like Yanni at that $10,000 mark. He's at 98 on DraftKings, the same. I think there's a fair bit of value there. Source Castillo at 3,800. Nick Stauskas, he had 24 in the last game. The minutes have been reduced for Stauskas recently, but the numbers have still been okay. I don't feel like it's a great option though. Or Timothé Luwawu-Cabarrot up to 5,500. The guy is playing fantastically. He's averaging 29 across the last 3. The upside has been really taken away though by that price rise, and is at 59 on DraftKings. So I like Luwawu-Cabarrot. I don't like him at that price though. It just feels a little bit too high. Small forward Justin Anderson's at 42. Decent game from him in the last one. Probably more of a tournament guy though. And at 47 on DraftKings feels a little high. While Alex Poitras is a minimum salary guy. He's played 20 minutes in each of his games. Terrible in the last one with 7, but he did have a 25-pointer in there. So at 3,500, I think Poitras is a definite upside GPP guy, because if he's getting 25 minutes a night, which we assume he will if Spanish Chocolate is out, not that they play the same position, but it moves Stauskas from the 2 down to the 1, and it opens up minutes across the wing. But Poitras has played at the 4 as well. And if we get a situation where Šarić is out, then you're going to get a lot more Poitras happening, and that's something to note as we move forward here. At power forward, Richaun Holmes, 6,100. He's been solid. He's got upside there. I think he's a fine option to play at that sort of a price tag. While Šarić is just not happening in the limited minutes. He's labouring around the court. It's not going down. Sexy boy Sean Long. He's at 3,800. I think he's more of a tournament guy. I don't feel confident about using him in cash by any stretch. Well, Greggy Munro, no way. Same with Thon McCurr at minimum salary. He's seen the minutes come down a little bit in the last couple of games. All right, let's move on to the next one now. We've got the Miami Heat and the Washington Wizards. The Wizards, they're favoured by 5.5. Markieff Morris missed the last game with a sore right ankle, and Lukey Babbitt has missed the last 2 with his right hip flexor strain. So if Luke is out, we're going to get more minutes for Akaro White, but more importantly for our Marta Jimmy Johnson. While if Markieff is out, it opens up the minutes for Marcin Gortat and for Jason Smith and Kelly Oubre. They're the 3 guys who really benefit the most there. At point guard, Goran Dragic, 7,900. Now Dragic has been a bit reduced in his production, averaging 33 the last 5, but he's got a stellar record against John Wall and the Wizards, averaging 42 points the last 3 times that he's taken on the Wiz. At 7,900, I don't really think that there's much value in Dragic there. Now, as for Wall, 10,300, he has struggled against Dragic and the Heat. In fact, in those last 3 games, Dragic has got a higher average than Wall. And at that sort of a price tag, I'm not really that keen on throwing Johnny out there. I think that there are going to be better options available for you. Tyler Johnson's the other point guard who really has any appeal. He's at 5,500. I just feel like that's maybe $500 too high for Tyler, and I don't really see it as being great. I do like Joshy Richardson, though, at 4,900. Yeah, brought it again today with another 25-point performance. I feel pretty good about his floor, and I think he's got a decent ceiling, so I think he can be used in both tournaments and in cash games. On DraftKings, he's at 5,700, so I push back a fair bit on that, and I'm not interested in him over there on that salary. 7,500 for Braddles Beal is all right. I think it's a decent cash play because he's got a very good floor, but I don't know how high his actual upside is, and the matchup's not a great one for Brad, so it's not a good play, I don't think. Bojan Bogdanovic at minimum salary is always a tournament option. We saw him play big minutes in the last one and do nothing with him, but he played big minutes. While Kelly Oubre, Otto Porter, Scooter Magruder, I can't see any of those guys being useful. Jim Johnson, 6,400, just dropped a casual 45 on our heads today with Lukey Babbitt out. I still think that price is a really hard one to use him at. 66 on DraftKings is high as well. So as much as I love Jim, that salary it's not offering me much upside. So I don't really like it that much. Well, I wouldn't be using Markieff Morris even if he did play at center. Mahinmi's a minimum salary punt type of an option. Marcin Gortat is a $4,700 guy. I don't really feel like there's any value there with him. Hassan Whiteside's the one we want to look at. 8,500, struggled today, but I reckon you're getting 40 plus here from Hassan, and I think we should get a pretty significant bounce back from Whiteside. So he would be a guy that I would consider for cash and for tournaments. Let's move on to the next game. The rain has eased off here, although you can still hear it, I'm sure. The Los Angeles Clippers and the San Antonio Spurs, there is no spread here for this one. We will assume that Aldridge, Leonard, and Powell are all back. I don't know about Manu Ginobili. I don't know about Dan Green. But if those guys happen to remain out, then you see Bryn Forbes get a boost. Not enough for me to consider him. John Simmons becomes an option that you would look at in tournaments. And Kyle Anderson gets a boost there as well, as does Pat Mills. We also assume that Tone Parker will be back in the lineup. At point guards, we can start with Tone. He's at 3,900. That's a nice price for Parker after resting today. The matchup against Chris Paul is far from ideal, but Parker is averaging 24 points his last 3 outings. And at 3,900, that's nice. I don't feel like he's a good play, but if you're looking for a cheap point guard option, there aren't a huge amount around. He could be one of those guys. As for Chrissy Paul, 9,400. Terrible matchup for him. They just reduced the point guard's production fairly consistently in it, and you can look at that, what Paul has done, only 35-point average across his last 3 games against the Spurs. I don't like this one here for him. And Pat Mills, not really feeling that either. At shooting guard, JJ Redick's been getting a lot of minutes, and he's put up some decent numbers, but I don't find that he's consistent enough at 4,800 to use. And as a tournament upside, I'm not really sure that it's high enough at 4,800. Yes, he had 34 in the last game, but I don't feel great about him. Green, Ginobili, Jamal, Crawford's minutes have been way down. He's averaging 11 points over the last 3, and he's a minimum salary play now. So if you want to go off the board, I think that Crawford could be that guy that comes out of nowhere and drops in a 29 or 30 pointer at 3,500, and that's a huge return. So I think that he should be in your GPP player pool. At small forward, Kawhi will be returning. We hope. He is at, we hope 9,200 for Kawhi. I don't think you should have too many concerns with using him. I think that's a pretty decent option. While of course Luke Marmute is not worth the time it took me to say his name. 3,600 for Kyle Anderson gets a bump if Ginobili and Green happen to be out, but that's obviously a situation we need to look at if it happens. At power forward, LaMarcus Aldridge is at 69 on FanDuel, and that's all right, but it's not as good as the price that he comes in on DraftKings, which is 6,200, and I'd be all for using LaMarcus Aldridge at that 6,200 price tag. Blake Griffin, by comparison, is at 9,200. That's very high for Blake. I think, well, he's been playing fantastically. He's averaging 48 over the last 3, which at 92 is a real win. This matchup's a tougher one. I would probably look at him more as a tournament type of guy rather than me feeling confident now. Davis Bertans and David Lee are guys who have had decent games today, but with Aldridge back, with Gasol back, I don't think we can really rely upon them too much. As for Gasol, 5,700, Plays well against DeAndre Jordan, had been playing well prior to this rest. I think that you should feel pretty good about Gasol, with a real chance to approach 30. So I think that he's worth a look. Dwayne Dedman, not really. And DeAndre Jordan at 8,100, I think that's way too high for DeAndre. Now, he's at 66 on DraftKings, so that gets me interested, and that I would use. 81 on FanDuel, I would not. Let's now move on to the next game. We've got the Utah Jazz. They're taking on the Portland Trailblazers. No spread out here. We don't know whether George Hill is playing or Raul Neto. Hill is obviously the major guy of importance that we need to pay some attention to, because if he is out, then it opens up those minutes for Shelvin Mack. Now, interestingly, Alec Burks was a DNP CD in this game, even with George Hill out. So that is an interesting turn of events. Let's talk point guards. Dame Lillard at 9,100. Great tournament play, terrible matchup, so hard to use him in cash. While at 8,000 on DraftKings, that actually does tempt me for cash. 8,000 is super cheap for Dame Lillard. He averages 38 against the Jazz, so that's not far off. I'd still probably lean a little bit more towards tournaments, but at $8,000, it is hard to pass up on. But if it wasn't against the Jazz, I would say, yeah, I would use that 8,000 at cash, but against the Jazz does give me some level of pause. George Hill, Dante Exum, no. Shelvin Mack at 36 becomes a GPP option if Hill happens to be out. CJ McCollum at $7,000, I'd have to say no to him at 7,000, but at 64 on DraftKings, I would say yes. I think that that's worth looking at. His numbers have been okay recently without being spectacular, but at 6,400, I think he can achieve that. While the blue swimmer, Alan Crabb at $4,000. He dropped in 37 in the last game, and he's averaging 23 across his last 5, but I would only feel comfortable about using the blue swimmer if I was doing it in a GPP situation, because he is so reliant upon that shot going in. And if that doesn't go in, then he gives you a big bucket of sweet FA. At small forward, Mo Harkless at minimum salary. That is the only reason I would consider, Harkless is because he's at minimum salary. He's gaining minutes and doing nothing with them, but there is a chance for him. So he's a GPP option, same as Evan Turner, who is at 3,600 on DraftKings, who is actually averaging 22 points across the last 5, which is a pretty decent return at that $3,600 salary. So I would be okay with throwing either Harkless or Turner into a tournament, depending on what site, depends on which guy. Harkless on FanDuel, Turner on DraftKings. Jingling Joe Ingles at 4,200, you easily beat that value today, but I don't feel totally confident, nor with Joe Johnson, who had a big game. Not a lot for me to love there. While Gordie Hayward at 78 is fine. 72 is great on DraftKings, and I think Hayward is a really, really solid option at that $7,200 price tag. Al-Farouq Aminu, 5,400. That's a big jump of $600, so that turns me a little bit off Aminu at that price. 54 on DraftKings too. He's solid. I don't think there's a huge amount of upside though, so he's all right without being great. And Derek Favors in a back-to-back, 16 minutes, no. At center, Rudy Gobert, 9,100. Pretty good matchup for him going up against Myers Leonard. I feel pretty good about Rudy exceeding 40. He's at 86 on DraftKings. I like that even more. One of the better high-price centers that is out there. Samuel, and I don't believe this is your last name. Samuel, I like to drum. If that is your last name, congratulations. You have a very good last name, assuming that you're a drummer. Lillard forgot to play after Nurkic got injured. Anyone else notice that? I'm not sure that's 100% right, but it is definitely impacting him. I don't think he forgot how to play, but I know what you're getting at, because yes, his efficiency has dropped off and he hasn't looked anywhere near as good with Vonleh or Myers Leonard running at center as opposed to Nurkic. But that is a huge part of it, definitely. So that is a good that's a good observation about. And Nurkic has hurt what Lillard has done, definitely, and it has reduced his efficiency levels, no doubt about that. Let's now move on to the last game of the night. The rain has abated. No spread for the Pelicans and the Warriors. This has got shit show written all over it. I don't think we see Boogie. I don't think we see Tone Davis. We're going to see the return of Kevin Durant, but Steph Curry is listed as doubtful. We should get Draymond and Andre Iguodala back as well. But again, it's got shit show written all over it. Now, with Curry out, or likely out, Shawnee Livingston is the player that we're going to be paying some attention to. Minimum salary guy, Livingston, 3,500 on FanDuel, 3,000 on DraftKings. He played like 28 minutes the last time Steph sat out. No problem with throwing him in there. Worth a look. Now, the Pelicans, I have no idea, because I think Drew's going to play minimum 24 minutes, or not minimum. I think he's going to play around 24, and that's not going to be worthwhile. The guys on the Pelicans that you want to have a look at, I think, are going to be guys like Jordan Crawford, Alexia Jinsa. Maybe you go deep and you throw in a Sheikh Diallo, but otherwise it's going to be real tough to feel confident. Now, Ajinsa's a minimum, and I'm covering this game in a different way just because of the absolute weirdness of it. Ajinsa at minimum salary, I think, is a very good option. $3,000 on DraftKings, put up 27 today. I think there's a real chance, especially with Boogie and Davis both potentially being out, that he can put up a big one. Klay Thompson at 6,900 would be a tournament option, in my opinion, just because he can go off and get hot. Even in 28 minutes, he could drop a 50-pointer. That would be my rationale for using him. As for Kevin Durant, 8,700 for Durant. Sure, in a tournament, you could have a look at Durant. I would feel no confidence in using him in cash because I don't believe that he will have no minutes restriction when he's back. No, I just don't believe that. As I said, Sheikh Diallo at minimum salary is someone that we can pay some attention to. I wouldn't want to use Davis. Etuan Moore. Solly Hill, Dante Cunningham. No interest. The guys who are interesting in this game, Ajinsa, Livingston, Crawford, Diallo, Thompson, and that's really about it. Maybe you throw Ian Clark into a tournament because we've seen Clarkey put up these weird shooting performances, and without Steph there, maybe he gets hot and they run him at point guard a little bit extra. So Clark is another GPP guy, but this game has got nightmare DFS potential written all over it. But Klay is probably the high price guy that I want to throw into a tournament because without Steph, maybe Klay just goes bananas. That's a real possibility too. All right, let's now look at the picks of the day. FanDuel, Shawnee Livingston, minimum 35, TJ McConnell, 57, and Isaiah Thomas, 86. At shooting guard, Geordie Crawford, 36, Batum at 64, and Adetokounmpo at 10,000. At small forward, Mo Harkless, minimum 35, Chrissy Middleton, 59, and Jim Butler at 10.5. And at power forward, Noah Vonleh at 36, Richaun Holmes, 61, and Blakey Griffin at 92. And at center, Ajinsa, 35, Pau Gasol, 57, and Vooch at 8,200 on DraftKings. Livingston, 3,000, Jeff Teague, 67, and Lillard at 8,000. At shooting guard, Geordie Crawford, 41, CJ McCollum, 64, and Jim Butler at 10.5. Evan Turner, 36, Chrissy Middleton, 61, and Yanni at 98. Power forward, Mo Harkless, 36, Aldridge at 62, and Paul George, 9,300. And at center, Ajinsa, 3,000, Miles Turner, 57, and Rudy Gobert, 8,600. We are done. Don't forget, tell your friends about the podcast. Introduce them to maybe something that you find enjoyable. We're going to be talking lots of NBA. We're going to be doing NBA playoff DFS, but we're going to be talking all sorts of, as we do all the time, address fantasy stuff, but I cover the NBA, I think, on a pretty bloody good basis throughout the season, every day of the year. This podcast is going to be cranking on. Again, I have time off in July. That's when I have time off. The podcast keeps going there, but even then you'll get some summer league pods and some stuff happening there. So subscribe to the podcast. Even if you're not listening, just keep downloading it. It really helps the numbers. And thanks to all your efforts, we've acquired some more sponsors that really do help this show going. I've got 4 sponsors happening at the moment now, a couple of new ones to introduce over the next couple of weeks, which is great news. And that's thanks to all the efforts that you guys put in. And don't forget our existing sponsors, SeatGeek. Go ahead and use SeatGeek and use that promo code LOFantasy and get yourself that $20 rebate off your first ticket purchase, or go to Blue Apron, blueapron.com/LOFB. Use that URL and you can get 3 free meals of all the beautiful food that Blue Apron delivers. Check out the rest of the Locked On Podcast Network as well. And of course, Basketball Monster for all your playoff DFS needs. We're done. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Greg Popovich.